Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Renuka, and with me is Nipunika Shahid, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India and Canada to relaunch comprehensive economic partnership agreement negotiations to unlock full potential of bilateral trade. New Delhi says India-Canada Bilateral Centre to be set up for dedicated science and technology activities. India and China hold 15th round of Corps Commander level talks in Ladakh. UN Security Council to convene a meeting at Russia's request to discuss alleged US military biological activities in Ukraine. US Vice President Kamala Harris met Romanian President Klaus Iohannis amid growing concerns over influx of displaced people fleeing Ukraine. China again battles severe COVID-19 outbreak of highly infectious Omicron variant, puts 9 million residents under lockdown. Indian and Sri Lankan fishermen celebrate annual St. Anthony Festival. Lakshya Sen enters semi-final of German Open Badminton. And in Women's World Cup, India to take on West Indies at Hamilton on Saturday. As we start the bulletin, we appeal to our listeners to stay safe from COVID-19 by following these 4 simple steps. Get fully vaccinated, wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. And now the news in detail. The Indian Commerce and Industry Ministry has said India-Canada will relaunch the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement negotiations to unlock full potential of bilateral trade. India and Canada held the 5th Ministerial Dialogue on Trade and Investment on Friday. We have a report.
Indian Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal and Canadian Minister for Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade, Mary Ng, co-chaired the meeting. A range of other bilateral trade and investment issues were discussed during the meeting. The ministers emphasized that the trade agreement would help in expanding bilateral trade in goods and services through unlocking the potential across sectors. Canada also agreed to examine expeditiously the request for conformity verification body status to Agricultural and Processed Food Products Export Development Authority for facilitating Indian organic export products. The ministers acknowledged the significance of establishing resilient supply chains in critical sectors and exchanged views on collaboration. They emphasized on enhancing cooperation in sectors such as pharmaceuticals, rare earth minerals, tourism, urban infrastructure, renewable energy and mining. They also noted the role of strong people-to-people ties between the two countries. With the report of Bhupendra, this is Niharika Bhuvania, All India Radio World News, New Delhi.
Meanwhile, Science and Technology Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh has said that the India-Canada Bilateral Centre will be set up for dedicated science and technology activities between the two countries. He said India has already established such bilateral centres in countries like US, Germany and France. A delegation led by Canadian Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development, Mary Ng, on Friday met Dr. Jitendra Singh and reviewed the progress of bilateral cooperation in several key areas. Dr. Jitendra Singh invited Canada to tap the unexplored areas like ocean and sea missions in India.
The 15th round of Corps Commander level talks between India and China began on Friday morning. Fire and Fury GOC Lieutenant General Anindya Sengupta is leading an Indian delegation in the talks with People's Liberation Army South Xinjiang Military District Chief of Staff Major General Yang Lin on the Indian side of Chushul Moldo border post. The talks held nearly 2 months after the 14th round of talks on 12th January this year on India's invitation. In February, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said India will not agree to any change in the status quo and any attempt to change the LAC unilaterally by one side. After 14 rounds of talks in nearly 2 years of military standoff, the Chinese Foreign Ministry recently said the two sides can make a step forward on the border issues, reach a solution and seek proper settlement of the disputes acceptable to both sides in the Friday talks. After disengagement has been undertaken on the north and south banks of Pangong Tso, Galwan and Gogra. India has been insisting troop disengagement at the vital patrolling point 15 and the remaining friction areas like PP-17 and 17A in Hot Springs, Gogra Post. Apart from the friction points, illegal construction of a bridge on Pangong Lake by China in eastern Ladakh also may come up in the talks. Both the countries are positively looking forward with the resolve to find mutually acceptable solution in the 15th round of talks. In today's Hotspots section, we bring you a discussion on developments in Afghanistan and implications. We are joined by former diplomat G. Parthasarthi and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
India, among all the other countries of the world, has not recognized the new regime in Afghanistan. But because of its special relationship with the Afghan people, and because of the deteriorating humanitarian situation in that country, India has sent wheat and is supplying life-saving essential medicines and even supplied 500,000 doses of the COVID vaccine to Afghanistan. India plans to send another 8,000 tons of wheat in a bid to help the country facing acute poverty and hunger ever since the Taliban takeover of that country in August 2021. Since the United States froze Afghanistan's dollar-denominated assets, the Taliban-led administration has apparently been using wheat as a payment for thousands of government workers as the country's financial crisis intensifies. So India's humanitarian assistance is very timely and intended to help the ordinary Afghan people. We are joined today by Ambassador G. Parthasarthi, who has been India's High Commissioner to Pakistan, and he will help us outline the contours of India's special relationship with Afghanistan and what India can genuinely do to help. Good evening, Partha.
Good evening.
So what exactly is happening inside Afghanistan today? How bad is the situation on the ground?
Well, I think one can only feel sorry for the people of Afghanistan, because I have no doubt that the Taliban and its leadership are looking after themselves pretty well. But India has always made its mark in Afghanistan by relating to the Afghan people. Mm-hmm. We are seen as a friendly country who does them no harm. Mm-hmm. We have no border disputes with them. And the aid program which we gave when the Americans were there and before the Taliban takeover has left a deep impression on everybody. Trade had also helped them. India is a large market. And finally, the huge number of Afghan students who have now provided them human resource capabilities which are pretty good has dwindled to zero. Obviously, we have problems because nobody recognizes the Taliban government as being a legitimate one. But you will have to follow that, but not to the extent of causing harm to the Afghan people. So there would have to be a dual policy in dealing with Afghanistan, one for its people and one for the government. The government will be according to international norms. But for its people, I think we should be visibly doing things to help them. Wheat has certainly been a very good example, but also we have problems of transporting it through Pakistan. So therefore, I think it's necessary to open a new trade route through Iran and transported material through Iran. Also, there are the minorities like the Tajiks and others who perhaps need assistance. And Iran is an ideal conduit to provide assistance to them, both by air and by road from Iran itself.
So how then do you propose that the Indian government should actually pursue this dual kind of policy, as you call it? I mean, on the one side, India is trying to push for a more inclusive and a terrorist-free government. How does it reconcile that with trying to get through to the people of Afghanistan?
There is no getting away from one fact that you have to, even say the UN agencies would have to go to the Taliban for some form of, I would suggest, work in close consultations with the UN agencies. Keep in touch with your friends. I'm afraid what I learned from my friends who have a lot of friends in Afghanistan is even important people who have been great friends of India. We are tending to be rather cautious, in my view, perhaps overly cautious in dealing with. We'll have to develop channels of communication with our friends there. We could perhaps work out some arrangement with the UN so that we can get our personnel in and out of there and also have our relief supplies will fly. And for that, even if you have to talk through someone with the Taliban authorities, of course, because they after all transport it and arrange for transport, we should not hesitate to do so.
Former President Hamid Karzai, in an interview just day before yesterday, has urged India to actually reopen its diplomatic mission in Afghanistan and said that India's assistance would of course be very welcome and he had expected India to play a greater role. Now, how exactly do you think this can be accomplished? Is the security...
Given to doing things not very conventionally. Hamid Karzai had his college education in India. He's perhaps our best friend and influential. He has not burnt his boats with the Taliban. So I think establishing with the knowledge of the Taliban, we could have some form of contacts which will be helpful with Mr. Karzai. But we'll have to do that closely in consultations, and that's a diplomatic sort of route which the people in government will have to work out. But certainly, in my view, what I know of Mr. Karzai, I've met him on a number of occasions, you couldn't have a better friend in Afghanistan than him.
So when he suggests something like India needs to do more, and he's even gone to the extent of saying that the Taliban government would actually welcome the Indian presence, do you tend to believe that?
Yes, I do. See, you must realize what is happening in the Taliban relationship with Afghanistan. The borders are tense, and Pakistan is feeling the heat in its Pashtun areas and its Baloch areas from either the Tehrik-e-Taliban or from other groupings within Pakistan. But most importantly, Taliban has flatly refused to recognize the Durand Line as the border. Now, we can either sit back on our laurels and say, no, I have to go be nice. But I think we'll have to look at it in innovative terms, that we need to do this through a manner which is not official, but we have full guarantees for the safety and security there, and keep that going. How we do it is a matter of detail. I'm sure the government, all concerned departments and agencies could work it out. But to my view, having a presence in some form or other of Afghanistan is important.
The fact, of course, is that, the Chinese, the Russians, as well as the Pakistanis have retained their presence, diplomatic presence in Kabul. And a lot of people thought India should also do that. But given the security situation at that point of time, do you think it's improved enough for Indians to actually go there and be stationed there?
You need not call it station, but you could have rotational thing. I wouldn't like to put people through a very long period of time, but have a presence there. That is important. And one had anticipated this earlier. You saw the ruckus about food. And I have reports that the wheat that Pakistan sent was almost rejected by the Afghans. We need to keep that going. Do something imaginative for, say, small number of school children. These are things, how we can keep a presence there. I'm sure there are people, I can tell you at least the name of 2 or 3 of our former ambassadors who have been outstanding in that sort of, to do it. But we can't just sit back on our laurels. You can't lose the goodwill that Indian assistance and the Indian presence won us with the people of Pakistan for almost 2 decades. So that is my view. It might be unconventional, but it is something, because I'm not making any categorical suggestions, but I'm saying look at this path, some form of semi-military or attached to some UN body or whatever. But the fig leaf can always be there. But you have to have a presence there. There is goodwill for you, and just remember, make it people's oriented. Medicines, wheat, we've got more than enough and to spare. And let's use the Iranian route. I think it may cost a bit more, but it's worth it. We should not depend so much on Pakistan. Work with the Iranians and the Afghans together. Iran has been a very good partner of ours in Afghanistan since the days of Taliban Mark I, when Iran and India did not particularly relish Mullah Omar's constituents. We should follow up on that. That's my view.
Thank you so very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter @AIR News Alerts.
The United Nations Security Council will convene a meeting at Russia's request. First Deputy Permanent Representative of Russian mission Dmitry Polyansky said in a tweet that his country asked for a meeting of the Security Council to discuss the military biological activities of the US on the territory of Ukraine. Russia repeated its accusation of several years that the United States is working with Ukrainian laboratories to develop biological weapons. Such assertions in Russian media increased in the run-up to Moscow's military move into Ukraine and were made as recently as Wednesday by Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova. However, the United States denied renewed Russian accusations that Washington was operating biological warfare labs in Ukraine. US called the claims laughable and suggesting Moscow may be laying the groundwork to use a chemical or biological weapon. U.S. mission spokesperson to the United Nations, Olivia Dalton, said Russia has a well-documented history of using chemical weapons. In a statement, State Department spokesman Ned Price also said Russia is inventing false pretexts in an attempt to justify its own horrific actions in Ukraine. The World Health Organization, WHO, advised Ukraine to destroy any dangerous pathogens being kept in research laboratories to prevent any potential spills that could harm the public amid the conflict with Russia, a news agency reported. Biosecurity experts feared that bombardment on Ukrainian cities have raised the risk of an escape of disease-causing pathogens should any of those facilities be damaged. Like many other countries, Ukraine has public health laboratories researching how to mitigate the threats of dangerous diseases affecting both animals and humans, including, most recently, COVID-19.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and Romanian President Klaus Iohannis met on Friday amid growing concerns about the influx of displaced people fleeing Ukraine for Romania and elsewhere in Eastern Europe because of Russia's military operation. The Ukrainian refugee crisis is a problem that Biden administration officials and European leaders warn will likely get more complicated in the days and weeks ahead. Ms. Harris' talks in Bucharest with Mr. Iohannis came after she spent time in Poland on Thursday. Poland has already welcomed some 1.5 million Ukrainians since last month. She met in Warsaw with Polish President Andrzej Duda and Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, Ukrainian refugees and others in hopes of getting a fuller picture of the unfolding humanitarian crisis. Harris told Iohannis soon after arriving in Bucharest that she sought to reaffirm commitment to this partnership and also to the NATO alliance as a whole. The southeastern European country of Romania, a nation of about 19 million residents, had taken in more than 84,000 displaced people as of Tuesday, according to United Nations data. Other countries on NATO's eastern flank, including Hungary, Moldova and Slovakia, have also welcomed tens of thousands of refugees.
In the United States, the Congress has passed a huge spending bill including almost $14 billion in humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine. The legislation had support from both Democrats and Republicans, who have both rallied behind sending aid to the country. According to media report, the emergency aid was said to be more than double what U.S. President Joe Biden's administration had originally requested. The House of Representatives had passed the bill a day earlier. Police in Sweden are donating helmets, flak jackets, binoculars and drones to Ukraine. Swedish Justice Minister Morgan Johansson said on Friday that Ukraine police had requested the material via the European police agency Europol, which has 27 member countries.
Ukraine's ambassador to Israel is calling on the country to join its Western allies in slapping sanctions on Russia. Yevgen Kornichuk told reporters on Friday that it is Israel's moral obligation to impose sanctions. Kornichuk also indicated that Israel's attempt at mediating between Kyiv and Moscow appeared to have stalled, saying it was unclear where the mediation stood and that he is not aware of any immediate task taken up by Israel on the matter. Israel is one of the few countries with good working relations with both Ukraine and Russia. China is again battling a severe COVID-19 outbreak of highly infectious Omicron variant. It has put 9 million residents of Changchun, capital of northeast China's Jilin province, under lockdown and suspended schools in the financial center, Shanghai. According to the National Health Commission, China reported 1,100 domestic infections on Friday, the highest level since the peak of the Wuhan outbreak, a tally that has risen from just over 300 cases a day in less than a week. The surge presents a significant challenge to the country's ongoing zero-tolerance approach to the virus, which has scattered across 14 provinces and municipalities in the ongoing outbreak, including Qingdao, Shanghai, Guangzhou, etc. State media reported Changchun will undergo 3 rounds of city-wide nucleic acid testing for COVID-19 starting from Friday. Except for those people involved in epidemic prevention, all working staff from administrative institutions in Changchun will work at home. The city authorities said on Friday that all enterprises except some certain designated firms providing public services to ensure people's livelihood will suspend operation. Except for basic needs of residents, all other stores will be suspended, schools will be closed, and buses, taxis and subways will be suspended, according to the city authorities.
The World Health Organization has said that corona cases are declining globally, but the pandemic is far from over. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus told media persons that the pandemic will not be over anywhere until it is over everywhere. He said the virus continues to evolve and we continue to face major obstacles in distributing vaccines, tests and treatments everywhere they are needed. The global health body also expressed concern that several countries are drastically reducing testing. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also supported the WHO chief's assessment. In a statement, he warned that it would be a grave mistake to think the virus was now in the rear-view mirror. The Government of India has taken a serious view and ordered a high-level court of inquiry into the accidental firing of a missile. The Ministry of Defence in a statement said on the 9th of March 2022, in the course of a routine maintenance, a technical malfunction led to the accidental firing of a missile. The ministry said it has learned that the missile landed in an area of Pakistan. It added while the incident is deeply regrettable, it is also a matter of relief that there has been no loss of life due to the accident. The 2-day annual festival of India and Sri Lankan fishermen began at Kachativu Island with flag hoisting on Friday evening. The pilgrims gathered for a prayer at St. Anthony's shrine dedicated to St. Anthony of Padua, the patron saint of fishermen and seafarers during ancient days. We have a report from a correspondent.
The St. Anthony's festival at Kachativu remains a long-lasting friendship for India and Sri Lanka. Priests from both countries conduct the mass and car procession, which begins with flag hoisting today evening. Deva Sahayam, the parish priest of the church at Rameshwaram and coordinator of the pilgrimage, would perform prayers. The Jaffna bishop holds the charge of the church. 76 pilgrims, including 2 women, are attending the event. The organizers from Sri Lanka had initially permitted 50 devotees from India to participate in the annual event. 50 fishermen and their families from the island nation of Sri Lanka are also attending the festival, which ends tomorrow. Before the pandemic, around 2,000 to 5,000 pilgrims from Tamil Nadu would take part in the traditional festival. P. Jayasuraj, the secretary of the Rameshwaram Fishermen's Association, thanked the centre and the state governments for making it possible for the pilgrims to make it to the festival this year. Sri Lankan Fisheries Minister Douglas Devananda met representatives of fishermen bodies from Rameshwaram at Kachativu. Joy for AIR World News from Chennai.
The Sensex and the Nifty today gained marginally. Both domestic stock benchmarks added amid mixed cues from the global share markets. In the forex market, the rupee appreciated 29 paise against the US dollar. A report from the Business World.
Sensex climbed by 86 points, 0.15% to trade at 55,550. Nifty also rose by 36 points, 0.21% to trade at 16,630. Amongst global markets, Asian shares traded mixed after the fastest US inflation rate in 4 decades bolstered expectations for more aggressive rate hikes. China Shanghai Composite Index gained 0.4% and Singapore Straits Times Index added 0.3%. On the other side, Japan's Nikkei 225 plunged 2.1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng fell 1.5% each. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading around $109.90 per barrel. Arjun Chaudhary for World News, All India Radio.
In German Open badminton, India's Lakshya Sen has entered the semi-final. In the quarter-final match this evening, Lakshya beat HS Pranoy 21-15, 21-16. In another thrilling quarter-final, Indian star shuttler Kidambi Srikanth lost to Victor Axelsen of Denmark 10-21, 21-23. Now, Lakshya Sen will face Victor Axelsen in the semi-final. In the ICC Women's World Cup cricket, India will take on the West Indies at the Seddon Park, Hamilton on Saturday. The match is scheduled to begin at 6:30 am Indian time. India will look to bounce back from their 62 runs defeat to New Zealand on Thursday.
In hockey, after the two-legged contest against Spain, the India women's team will square off against Germany in the FIH Hockey Pro League matches. The matches are scheduled to take place on Saturday and Sunday at the Kalinga Stadium in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Let us take a look at the press reports on China. Hindustan Times headline reads, India-China to continue military dialogue, expectations low on outcomes today. It says that the military commanders of India and China are meeting at Chushul for the 15th round of talks to disengage and de-escalate the military posture in East Ladakh. AP reports that China is wrapping up the annual session of its rubber-stamped legislature against the backdrop of Beijing's controversial position on the war in Ukraine and a COVID-19 surge. Let us take a look at what made the headlines in Nepal. Most publications prominently carried reports of the easing of COVID-related travel restrictions in Nepal on Thursday. The Times of India writes that international travellers will now be able to easily travel to the Himalayan region without undergoing a pre-departure PCR test. All they will need now is to show their vaccination certificate. Kathmandu Post carried the headline, Tourism sector upbeat as Nepal throws door open to fully vaxxed travellers.
Let us have some brief news from Afghanistan. Tolo News writes that the former President Hamid Karzai once again urged that a Loya Jirga National Assembly be called, saying it is the only path towards ending the current challenges of the country. It says that the former Afghan president, who was in power from 2001 to 2014, told Iran's Arabic language news network Al-Alam that he and the chairman of the High Council for National Reconciliation, Abdullah, have faced challenges in travelling abroad and hope that these problems would be solved in the future. Padwalk News writes that U.S. Republican Congressman Scott Perry has called for the resignation of Pakistan as a state sponsor of terrorism, according to a media report on Friday. The bill moved by him seeks to provide for the designation of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan as a state sponsor of terrorism and for other purposes. The bill has now been transferred to the U.S. House Committee on Foreign Affairs. Let us have some brief news from Bangladesh. Bangladesh Law Minister Anisul Haq has said the price of edible oil will come down shortly as the government has taken steps to keep the price under control, reports Daily Star. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has said that the contribution of national poet Qazi Nazrul Islam in building the national identity of the Bengalis is undeniable, reports Dhaka Tribune.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India and Canada to relaunch comprehensive economic partnership agreement negotiations to unlock full potential of bilateral trade. New Delhi says India-Canada Bilateral Centre to be set up for dedicated science and technology activities. India and China hold 15th round of Corps commander-level talks in Ladakh. UN Security Council to convene a meeting at Russia's request to discuss alleged U.S. military biological activities in Ukraine. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris met Romanian President Klaus Iohannis amid growing concerns over influx of displaced people fleeing Ukraine. China again battles severe COVID-19 outbreak of highly infectious Omicron variant, puts 9 million residents under lockdown. India and Sri Lankan fishermen celebrate annual St. Anthony Festival. Lakshya Sen enters semi-final of German Open badminton, and in Women's World Cup, India to take on West Indies at Hamilton on Saturday.
And now before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favourite bhajan, Vaishnava Jan, by artists from France.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.